O kingship people of Pakumotu state, O kingship of the nations of Marquesas Island, O kingship nation from the Tuamotu's Islands, O kingship nation from the Mangaravas Island, O kingship nation from the island of Tahiti and Moorea, O kingship nation from the Leeward's Island, O kingship nation from the Oswald Islands and from Rapa's Islands, O we the kings and the queens who gathered today in the solemn assembly, O you ladies and gentlemen, welcome. The law which guides the lands is the kingship law. Today, Wednesday, June the 2nd of the year 2010, the king decides with great power in front of all the kings and in front of all the faces of the nations of the world who are witness of it. A powerful proclamation of the king now from his talking to you, all that your land is perfectly independent today. The nation too is perfectly independent. Our human rights also is perfectly independent. The nationality of the Pakumotu state is perfectly independent. The standing power of our language, the standing power of our Pakumotu state's government, its own resources, its own natural resources, its own markets on lands, down the lands, and in the depth of the land, on the ocean, within the depth of the ocean, all around the marine zone and the aerial zone, within the Pakumotu's Pacific Ocean. Everything which were nominated are perfectly independent, with power and independent of the Pakumotu state, the real property owner of all. None of the other nation or none of any associations or organization can forbid or break out this proclamation of the perfect power of the king, testified and sustained by all the kings and queens. The power of the state, which is leading now, it's finished. There will be no more ruling today on Wednesday, June the 2nd, 2010 at 9 o'clock a.m. All of this perfect power is within the hands of the kings, and the king's power will lead and command the land. The king confirmed in front of all the kings and in front of the people nation, there will not be any chasing people out of this land, even though you belong to another nation, unless you are under prosecutions of the law. The king decides powerfully that the lifestyle will fall down. The king decides that there won't be no money or device transfer out of the marine and aerial zone of the Pakumotu state. You have to know that within the history of our ancestors in those days, especially on June 29, 1880, the King Pomare V has congratulated the government of his goodwill. I'm talking about the government, the French government. But his royal power and his land's power were never gave up. The king has kept it since then until today. We, the kingship of today, we hold on these two powers, the royal power and the land's power. Today, the life over here on our land is upside down. Everything's bankrupt throughout the uncontrolled political leaders of the French states. Therefore, the king is very upset to these political leaders of the French state, and because of all these corruptions, the king is rising up with the fullness of his power and decide to lead and to command his sovereign state, which is the whole islands of Tahiti, the whole islands which are known and unknown, which comprises the Marquesas Islands, the Tuamotu's archipelagos, the Gambia's Islands, the Austral Islands, the Leeward Islands, and the Society Islands. The power of the king goes to the end of the marine zone and to the highest aerial zone of the Pakumotu's Pacific Ocean, the so-called Polynesia. The king gives, so the kings get it back. The king decides that the government and all the services led by the French state, all the banks, all the economic life, all the airfields, the airports and flights, all the docks and the coasting, all the private enterprises, everything which are within the Pakumotu's Republic sovereign independent state will be under his sovereign royalty leadership. Our royal power is a blood power, an ancestral power, a land's power property, a lineage ancestral power. In the name of the Father Almighty and of His Son Jesus Christ, the King of the Kings, and His Mother Saint Maria, and in the names of the ancestors, the King of the earth, the King of the thunder, the nurtures, the kings of fire and of the winds, the kings of the fire, the water and the ocean, the kings of the animals, the ocean and lands on the air, kings of strength, of wisdom, of peace, of love, and of riches. The king is calling up to you, the Pakumotu's nation. Do not be afraid. There will be no problem. Be secure and live peacefully. We are perfectly independent in terms of our money and our banks. We are perfectly independent to examine all the treasury of the bank within Tahiti. We are perfectly independent to examine the wages of all the government workers. We are perfectly independent to examine all the treasury of the government. We are perfectly independent to forbid any treasury transfer out of the marine zone and the aerial zone. We are perfectly independent any marketing out of our marine zone and of the aerial zone. We are perfectly independent up to the airports and of the docks. We are perfectly independent to examine all the services of the government enterprises and the private enterprises. We are perfectly independent on our resources, and we are our proper resources of ourselves. The Pakumotu's Republic sovereign independent state nation, who has the nationality of the Pakumotu state independent within the Pakumotu's Pacific Ocean, on his land, on his proper resource, under the land, and in the depth of the land, all the resources, the sovereign Pakumotu's nations is the owner property. Every flight that fly in the aerial zone and up high in the sky, like the satellites, everything that the eyes can see and the unseen within the marine zone and within the aerial zone of the Pakumotu's Pacific Ocean, the sovereign Pakumotu's nations is the owner property. The marine zone of the Pakumotu's Republic sovereign state, the resources over the ocean, within and in the depth of the ocean, all the resources that grow within and on the oceans, the sovereign Pakumotu's nation is the property owner. All the islands in which they have their own king, everything is settled, but the other islands which do not have their authority, they are under the power of the king of Tahiti and the other kings and queens of the Pakumotu's independent state. The king has decided that the French government do not have any more authority in Tahiti and within all the other islands in which all the kings are staying. The king has decided to prohibit strongly any kind of weapons within our lands, from Tahiti and all around the islands of Pakumotu's Pacific Ocean. Any kind of persons who would like to come within the marine zone of the Pakumotu's Republic sovereign independent state, they must apply for a residency permit to the sovereign Pakumotu state. All around the marine zone, the Pakumotu's Republic sovereign independent state, is the owner property. The king will send the second declaration, official royal acts in the United Nations to the French state and all the other states within the United Nations. We sustain the king's power, the ancestral blood's power, the land blood power, the land's owner property power. The sovereign Pakumotu's independent state is the powerful authority. All the declarations and decrees are powerfully in the hands of all the kings within the Pakumotu's independent state, and none of the other states or another nation can afford to erase the power of this proclamation done from the kings of the Pakumotu's independent state. Amen.